Hello and welcome to TVP World this morning, coming to you live from Warsaw. My name is Alex Simlinsky and these are the latest updates in the world news. And we begin this hour with the U.S. President Donald Trump, who has dismissed the Federal Court of Appeals ruling, which stated that most tariffs imposed by his administration at the beginning of the year were illegal. Trump said that despite the ruling, all the tariffs remain in effect. In a post on Truth Social, Trump stated that a highly partisan appeals court incorrectly requested tariffs to be removed. The U.S. president also stated that the ruling will now be appealed at the Supreme Court. Trump administration has until October 14th to fight the Federal Court of Appeals ruling. Until then, all the tariffs are to remain in place.
Look at that. China, first row. China, 67%.
And now on to Ukraine, where one person has been killed and at least 22 injured in the wake of the overnight Russian attacks on Ukraine's southeastern Zaporizhzhia region, Ukrainian officials have said. This marks yet another Russian strike on Ukrainian civilians, despite Russia's claims that it is only targeting military objects and crucial infrastructure. The footage shows Ukraine's emergency services battling the fire of the destroyed residential buildings and offering medical assistance to the dwellers. Alongside the residential buildings, some retail spaces in the area were also damaged in that Russian attack. Russia continues to choose killing over ending the war, said Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Svyrydenko during a UN Security Council meeting. She went on to add that Moscow's unwillingness to participate in peace talks is evident, given the recent strikes on Ukraine that include attacks on civilian infrastructure.
These are deliberate acts of terror. It's an informed decision taken by Moscow to continue its systematic campaign to terrorize civilians and extinguish any semblance of normal life. Yesterday, Russia again responded brutally to our attempts to engage them in a civilized dialogue, in the language of international law, peace, and respect for human life. Russia continues to choose killing over ending the war.
Staying on the topic of Ukraine, Ukraine's current diplomatic momentum is at risk of rapidly fading. A senior United Nations official said as the body's Security Council held an emergency meeting in New York on Friday, following Russia's deadly strikes on Ukrainian cities, including the capital, Kyiv.
Russia has been placed on the
Pressure is needed to move Russia towards a peace deal. Andriy Yermak, chief of staff for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, told U.S. White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff during that meeting in New York. He also briefed Witkoff on recent Russian attacks and invited the Special Envoy to visit the capital, Kyiv.
The key priority is to push forward real diplomacy and ensure the implementation of all the agreements reached at the Washington summit. We are coordinating our efforts. At the start of the meeting, I briefed Steve Witkoff on the war crimes Russia commits daily against our cities and communities in Ukraine. I particularly spoke about the massive missile and drone attack on Kyiv that claimed the lives of 23 people, including 4 children. Unfortunately, Russia is failing to take the necessary steps to end the war and is clearly dragging out the hostilities. Ukraine supports President Trump's firm resolve, as well as that of all partners, to achieve a lasting peace as soon as possible. Ukraine welcomes all peace initiatives put forward by the United States, but unfortunately, each of them has so far been stalled by Russia. We are open to direct negotiations at the leaders' level and ready to discuss the broadest spectrum of issues. We believe that global pressure is needed to ensure Russia is genuinely ready to move toward peace and, particularly, to hold critically important leaders' meeting for that purpose.
The Russian offer for new low-level talks is nothing more than a delaying tactic, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told journalists, saying that the Kremlin is using the move to delay sanctions and additional U.S. support to Ukraine. He added that while the Russian economy is suffering, its leaders are insulated from reality.
I believe this is an artificial postponement of the leaders' meeting because they want to show the United States that they are constructive. In reality, they are not constructive, unfortunately. Yes, because people are dying. And they want to find formats for postponement. Postponement of what? Postponement of sanctions. Postponement of the American, hustle. Americans react badly when they see that they are being played and not treated fairly. They understand that postponement can also influence the American side. Russia has no desire to end the war. The question is why. They do not yet want to realize at the leadership level that this war is causing them serious losses. And we are talking not only about the political phase they have already lost, but also about the losses to their economy. They have not felt this yet, unfortunately. Although everyone already understands what is happening with their economy, the processes are bad.
Following talks between French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, the two leaders reiterated their support for Ukraine, as well as their commitment to providing strong security guarantees for the country. Both officials also called on Kyiv's allies to continue supporting Ukraine militarily for as long as it takes.
This peace is what we want. It is what the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also wants. And I say this with all the more force and solidarity after these last few days when attacks have resumed with force in a way that is also unprecedented in recent months, when Ukrainian civilians have once again been affected and where, as we can clearly see, the gap between the positions taken at international summits or with other leaders by Russian President Vladimir Putin and the reality on the ground shows how insincere he is. The next few days will be decisive, marking the end of the period we had given ourselves with US President Donald Trump and President Zelensky to secure the first meetings. And we will continue to exert pressure for additional sanctions to be taken by ourselves, and we are ready for this, but also by the United States of America, to force Russia to return to the negotiating table, while at the same time we must continue our support for Ukraine. Kiev needs strong security guarantees. I imagine a broad approach that rests on several pillars. It is good that we are also in agreement about this, dear Emmanuel. And the most important pillar is, already now, the Ukrainian armed forces, which must be strengthened permanently in the armament, in the financing, in training. And here we both bear responsibility. Germany a big one, and it will stay like this.
New sanctions on Russia and increased support for Ukraine. That's the reaction Europe should give to continuing Russian attacks on civilians. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said during a meeting with Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo.
We have to increase the pressure on Russia to come to the negotiation table. We're working together on the 19th sanction package. The 18th sanctions packages that we have launched are biting. You see the effects on the Russian economy. You see the attempts of circumvention of others. This is why we also have to renew our sanction packages. But we're working intensively together on the 19th sanctions package and, most importantly, unwavering support of Ukraine. So that is financial support, but it is also military support.
They continue bombing Kiev and other Ukrainian cities every day, every night. They're killing innocent people, civilians, hospitals, schools, etc. It's terrible. And we see it and understand this. It means that we have to work together even stronger to push him to the negotiation table. As Ursula mentioned, we need more sanctions, more military support to Ukraine, military security arrangements together with the US, which is crucial, and we need a strong, sustainable package. How to continue the support and finance Ukraine army also in the future.
A Hungarian opposition politician, Marton Tompos, has shown solidarity with the Ukrainian commander involved in last week's strikes on a Russian pumping station along the Druzhba pipeline. The drone strike halted Russian oil deliveries to Hungary for a week, prompting Budapest to slap the commander in question with an entry ban. The strikes caused a diplomatic row between Kyiv and Budapest, with Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó calling it an attack on his country's sovereignty. The Foreign Ministry also banned Ukrainian drone commander Robert Brovdi from entering the country. Brovdi, of Hungarian ethnicity and call sign Magyar, responded to the sanction by telling the Hungarian government to, quote, "stick your sanctions where the sun doesn't shine." In show of support, Hungarian opposition politician Marton Tompos donated €414 to Brovdi's unit, the 414th Strike UAV Brigade. And EU foreign ministers are convening in Copenhagen today. The talks are to mainly focus on the frozen Russian assets. Representatives of the 27 EU countries are now gathering in Copenhagen for the second day of an informal meeting organized as part of the Danish presidency. The EU is planning to use almost €200 billion of Russian assets that were frozen at the beginning of the war in Ukraine to rebuild the war-torn country. The other topic high on today's agenda is the situation in Gaza and Israel's handling of the war. The Romanian government, helmed by Prime Minister Ilie Boloyan, is continuing its fight against the country's massive budget deficit. The government is looking to implement its second package of fiscal measures divided into 6 separate bills.
Some of the planned measures aimed at reducing the staggering 9% budget deficit to 7% include raising the retirement age to 65 over the next 10 to 15 years, cutting a quarter of positions in local governments and reforming state companies by reducing large allowances and decreasing the number of board members. These solutions are expected to cut costs by almost €8 billion. The package was split into separate bills to avoid the risk of all measures being blocked in case one is found unconstitutional. This effort to fix the country's economy follows the victory in the presidential election of Nicu Șordan, who vowed that fixing the budget deficit must be the top priority. The European Union also said Bucharest must reduce its budget deficit in order to avoid having its EU funds withheld.
And now on to the topic of Serbia. Belgrade with Alexander Vučić is a proxy for Vladimir Putin and Russia, argues Dejana Stosic, activist and educator at the NADA agency. She also added that the Kremlin openly supports police brutality against student demonstrators who've been protesting the Serbian government since last November.
I would say that Belgrade with Alexander Vučić is a proxy for Vladimir Putin and Russia. Russia today has its building, I would say, in Serbia. It is really big media here, and it openly supports police brutality, and it's calling students' movements the, how are they calling it, colored revolution. So it is all supported by Russia, and this everything goes to Russia's favor, I would say, because Serbia is the only country in the Balkans who has tight connection, which, I mean, ruling party has tight connections with Russia, and a lot of media actually who has national frequency are having like Russian supported specialists to come to comment on Serbia's situation right now.
And with that, it's a wrap for this edition of the World News. But don't go away, as World Talks are up next.